One of the great things about the off-road community is there are lots of experienced folks that have been coming out here and hitting the trails for years, and they have a lot of experience, and they're willing to share some of that experience with new off-roaders, including the mistakes they've made over the years. And what I'd like to do today is sit down and talk about the most common mistakes that new off-roaders make to hopefully help make sure they come out here and have a great time and they do it responsibly. I know I've made several of these mistakes over the years. All right. Let me grab my chair, a cup of coffee, let's sit down. We got a good conversation we're gonna have today. It's finally starting to feel like fall. It's almost jacket weather. Can't wait for it to really cool off. I don't know about you guys, but I sleep really good on cold nights out at camp, and I'm looking forward to some milder temperatures for sure. All right, let's dive into some of these most common mistakes that new off-roaders make. Starting with, they try to do it alone. And I can tell you from personal experience that the very first time that I went out wheeling, thankfully I went out with a guy that I worked with. He had a Jeep and I had just bought my Jeep. And we were able to follow him around on the trail for the day, and he taught me so much about just some of the very basics. But after that, I thought I knew it all, and so my son and I would just go out and hit the trails on our own, and what we found out was that we still had a lot to learn. And it wasn't until we joined the San Diego Jeep Club, man, the guys that had been wheeling with that club for years shared so much invaluable knowledge and experience about how to get out here and wheel properly, how to handle your vehicle on difficult trails, the gear to bring, all the things that we really didn't know. And I think that new off-roaders, sometimes they buy their vehicle, their off-road vehicle, and they just want to go. They're excited. They want to go hit the dirt and have an adventure. And the truth is, that's great that you have that enthusiasm, but find somebody to go with. I encourage you to look up and find a local off-road club, because those people, usually they're going to really be super helpful, and you're going to learn some knowledge that you're not going to read in a textbook or even watch here in a YouTube video. The next mistake new off-roaders often make is they don't know how to put their vehicle into 4-low. Usually it's a very simple process. It involves coming to a complete stop, shifting into neutral, and then putting it into 4-low. But each vehicle might be just a little bit different. But the value of putting your vehicle into 4-low is tremendous. And sometimes new off-roaders don't even really understand that. I can tell you that it gives your vehicle so much more control when you are going through an obstacle, if you're descending down a hill. Just tremendous how much more torque you get, and it just makes your vehicle perform a little smoother. Usually if I'm out on the trails and I'm not going to be going more than 20 miles an hour and I'm going to be kind of going through some stuff during the day, I just put it in 4-low and I leave it there because I like how the vehicle handles everything. It just gets so much more torque. It's a better experience. Sometimes if you're in 4-high and you're trying to go through an obstacle, you might start jerking around a little bit. Unlike the gear ratio that 4-low puts you in, it makes things so much more controlled. So that's a common mistake I see with new off-roaders coming out, is sometimes they just don't even know how to put it into 4-low or why. All right, here's a mistake I hear stories about all too often, and that is new off-roaders take their spouse or their kids, their entire family out, and they go do some crazy trail and everybody gets stressed and freaked out and they don't want to do it again. I'll give you an example where a family went out for the very first time and they went on this crazy shelf road that got everybody off camber, and the kids and the spouse decided they were just going to get out and walk because they didn't want to be in the vehicle anymore. I can tell you that's just not something that you want to have happen, because having your kids and your wife out on the trail with you just makes the entire experience so much more enriching, and you make memories that are lasting for a lifetime. You don't want to freak them out and make them never want to come with you. Plus, a spouse that loves to go off-roading with you is going to be more inclined to allow you to go out more often and make some modifications to your vehicles. So, the first time you go out on a trail, just do something where you're going to have some fun, it's going to be nice and scenic, and you know what? Even if it makes sense, let the kids drive. Kids love driving off-road. Just make sure, you're taking it easy. But I guarantee the first time your son or daughter drives off-road, they'll never forget that experience. So don't freak your family out the first time off-road. Oh yeah, this next one is all too common, and that is folks go hit the trails and they don't bring basic off-road gear with them, like recovery gear, a fire extinguisher, a first aid kit. Those are just some essentials you should have when you go hit the trail, because look, there are some dangers involved out here. You know, you could get hurt, you could, fall, you could have a fire in your vehicle, or you could get stuck. So not only having those things is going to be beneficial, but knowing how to use them. If you have a first aid kit and you open it up, do you know what's in there and do you know how to use that stuff? Taking a basic first aid class is invaluable. Your recovery gear, you should absolutely know how to use that. Pull your winch out, go test it out, make sure you know how to use that stuff. I can't tell you how many times we've come up to a situation and somebody's like, hey, does anybody have a soft shackle? Because that guy or gal didn't have one. So make sure that you have some of that basic gear and you know how to use it. It's super important. And another thing is get yourself a good chair, because when you roll up to a spot for lunch or you just want to take a break, having a nice compact chair like this one is really, really nice. This is a front rotor chair I've had for years, and I will leave a link down below. If you want yourself a good chair that you can take with you out on the trail, this one works pretty well. All right, I don't think I've ever shared this with you guys before, but this one's a little bit of a pet peeve of mine, and that is following too close on the trail. When you are out on the trail, you need to give the vehicle in front of you a lot of extra space, and more than 2 car lengths as you would learn in driver school on the road, because you never know what something might happen, and there might be an abrupt stop because they got an obstacle or something broke. Being too close is just dangerous, especially if it's dusty. You definitely need to fall back and give that vehicle some room. But very specifically, and this is one that I think everybody needs to understand, is when you are going up hills, steep hills, and down steep hills, you need to wait until that vehicle has almost crested the hill or gotten to the bottom safely before you proceed. You don't want to follow somebody down a hill, because you could have a problem with your brakes, or maybe they have a problem shifting and they roll back. When you're on a hill, the last thing you want to do is follow anybody too closely. This one is one that I think a lot of folks see often, and that is somebody attempting a trail that is exceeding their driving skills or exceeding their vehicle's capabilities, getting out there and doing something harder than they're ready to do. I can tell you that there's been many times when I've been out on the trail and I've come across like a full-size truck that's only 2-wheel drive, and the owner thought, well, it's a truck, it's got big tires, I'll be fine. The truth is, it's not. You're not going to be okay, and I've had to pull them out of there. Just make sure that when you are hitting the trail that you're ready to go to that next level. Doing a moderate trail is fun and exciting. Doing a difficult one can be challenging, but a little stressful. I would say get out, have some great experiences on some easy trails, learn your vehicle, learn your capabilities before you go hit anything harder. And then when you do go hit those harder trails, go with somebody that's got some experience that's going to teach you how to pick the right line and how to use the tire placement, how to use the gas and the throttle properly as you're going over an obstacle. It'll pay dividends in the future. Don't go out and tackle the hardest trail you can find when you first go off-road. Oh yeah, here's a mistake that new off-roaders make a lot, and that's they don't have good navigation tools or the skills to use those tools. When we first started out, we would go out with maps and books and a compass, and we took our fair share of wrong turns. And even now, having some good GPS navigation, I'm still finding myself taking some wrong turns. Taking the time to plan out your route and understanding where you're going, and then having the tools to navigate through that trail is super important. Recording the trail can be almost invaluable, because if you take a wrong turn and then you take another wrong turn and then another wrong turn, and yes, I've done that many times, finding your way back can be a challenge, especially in the dark. So if you're recording your route, it's really helpful to kind of backtrack your steps a little bit. I mean, there are lots of trails out there that they split and they almost look like they're going in the same direction, and then they split again, and it doesn't take much before you find yourself way off track than you planned. And so as a new off-roader, sitting down and learning some basics about navigation, having some good tools will pay off in the end. All right, the next mistake that new off-roaders make is they don't have the right communications. And I see this time and time again when we are at big group events and we'll ask, hey, who doesn't have a radio? And there's always a couple hands that go up. Making sure that you have the right comms for the vehicles and group you're going to be going with is absolutely essential. When we first started out, I put a CB in my Jeep because Smokey and the Bandit had a CB. That's what I wanted. And it actually worked out okay back then. But today, most folks, most organizations are running GMRS radios, and that's a pretty good standard that we've kind of evolved to. I personally prefer ham radio, but I carry GMRS in all my vehicles because I think that's the way to go for most folks today. But knowing what the folks that you're going to be going with, what they're running, make sure that you have it before you show up. Also, frequencies and radios and all that stuff is important, but sometimes you're not going to be able to reach out and get somebody if you need help, and you may want to consider having some emergency communication. Something like a Zoleo satellite radio or a personal locator beacon, those things could actually save your life. There's nothing like a hot cup of coffee on a brisk morning like this. What a beautiful morning. All right, this next one is important that we all take heed to, and that is don't make the mistake of going off trail. You need to stay on the trail. If there's an obstacle and you can't get through it, that's not permission to go around it and create a bypass. It means you probably need to turn around and come back next time when you have a little more capability or better driver skills. But we should not be creating bypasses and we should not be going off the trail. It's so important to make sure that these trails stay open for generations. And if we start creating a mess out here, it's going to be a problem in the future. You know, there are places where you can go, where you can just kind of have free-for-all, like OHV areas out in the desert. Sometimes those places, it just doesn't matter. And if that's what you want to do, then go there. But when you're out here on these beautiful, pristine trails, stay on the trail. Don't create a bypass and don't go off the trail and start blazing new ones. All right, another mistake that new off-roaders make, and that's they fail to air down their tires when they're on the trail. And usually it's because they didn't bring the tools to air down or an air compressor to air back up at the end of the day, and they think, I'll just run full PSI during the day. And look, you can do that, but it's not good for your vehicle because running high tire pressures is going to create more stress on your vehicle. Plus, it's not good for the trail. Running high tire pressures at speed is what creates washboard roads. And at the end of the day, you're going to have more comfort, you're going to have more traction, and your tires will last a little bit longer because they're going to flex a little bit more. There's lots of great reasons and benefits for airing down your tires. So, new off-roaders, make sure you have the gear to air down and air back up at the end of the day. You and your vehicle and the trail will thank you for it. All right, here's a mistake that I made a lot early on, and that is I didn't plan my time very well. When you are out here on an adventure and exploring trails, it's easy to kind of lose track of time. And you think, okay, I'm going to drive 2 hours to get to this trail, and that trail should only take me 2 hours, and then I got 2 hours home and 6 hours. And then it turns into a 10 or 12-hour day because you need to account that, one, you're going to go much slower on the trail, and two, most likely you may want to make some stops or something could go wrong. It's inevitable that you may get to an obstacle and have a challenge. You might have a challenge with your vehicle. You never know. And so you always want to pad in a little bit of extra time to whatever you're planning. So if you're planning for, a 6-hour day, it may take you just a little bit longer. So make sure that you are being honest with yourself and those that are going with you about how long it might actually take. I've seen people that came out and thought that it was going to be, this is just going to be a 4-hour day, and 8 hours later they're like, hey, I thought I was going to be home watching football. Just make sure that you plan your time well when you're out on the trail. All right, here is a mistake that new off-roaders and some seasoned ones have a tendency to make, and that is they don't leave it better than they found it. I can't stress how important it is that when you are out here in the wilderness and you see some trash, pick it up. I'm not asking you to bring home a big trash bag full of stuff. If you just see a couple things on the ground, pick it up, and you've instantly made it better than you found it. I don't believe that the off-road community and the overland community are the ones out here destroying places like this. I think it's knuckleheads that are just, they camp one weekend a year and they just don't care about this stuff. We've got to be the ones that are responsible when we come out here and we see trash. You know what? Just pick it up. Leave it better than you found it. It's so important. There's a few pieces of trash here that I'm going to pick up before I leave today. Now, for all my seasoned off-roaders out there, what are some other mistakes that you have made or you've seen new off-roaders make that you think we could all learn from that I didn't talk about today? Put them down in the comments below, because how cool would it be to have just a huge database of lessons learned? I think that would be extremely valuable. If you've enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, and until next time, safe travels.